Hi, welcome to WatchYouWant.com. I'm Tim. Thanks for logging in. Today we're going to talk about the Vacheron Constantin Overseas Chronograph. This is a fantastic model that I feel is kind of underappreciated. If it's lived in the shadow of the Rolex Daytona, that's only because the Daytona has a longer track record. This is a top chronograph luxury watch from a Holy Trinity member of the Swiss watchmaking establishment. Now I should explain. The Holy Trinity traditionally is a fraternity that includes Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin, and Audemars Piguet, and it emerged during the mid-century in the 50s and the 60s when these watchmakers were producing some of the finest, most finely finished, and most beautifully conceived watches the industry had ever seen. And so they kind of soared to new heights during that golden age. And Vacheron, more than any of the others, has really upheld the tradition of elegance that grew out of this era. And that's what you see at play in the Overseas. Now, as you can tell, the case features alternating brushed and polished facets, and the effect is very impressive in person. Really, the bezel, which features one of many Vacheron Maltese cross motifs that you'll see on this watch, is striking, is unique, and since the Overseas was introduced in 1996 and updated in 2004, I would say that of the cardinal bedrock sports chronographs on the market, things like the Patek Philippe 5980, the Rolex Daytona that we've mentioned, this one really, and the Royal Oak Chronograph from Audemars Piguet I'll also throw into that group. This one's the most elegant of the lot, and this one's the most contemporary. Because it was the latest to the party, it showed up with all the tricks. So now what you can't see too easily, I'm going to move a little closer so hopefully you can get a shot of the elaborately guilloche dial here. Now each one of the sub-registers features concentric circles that are grained into the metal. It's a silver dial. It plays as light, kind of white maybe on camera. In person it's kind of a radiant silver. Very impressive, very delicately conceived. And you can see that there's actually what's called a clou de Paris, sort of diagonal hatchwork or cross hatching on the dial. So it's highly articulated. It's very interesting to look at up close. It's really emblematic of Vacheron's attention to detail when they create a case, a dial, when they create a bracelet. And the thing about the Overseas is, among that group, it's probably the best balance of sport, elegance, and utility. Because it does have a date. It has a large date, 12. It's very easy to read, and this double window jump date is certainly more accessible than the single window equivalent on the Audemars Piguet, and the Daytona doesn't have any date of any kind. So this one's more readable right off the bat. Now what they've also done that's really nice is they've given you a reasonable degree of water resistance. This watch is water resistant down to 150 meters. And I know you're thinking, when am I ever going to go down 150 meters? But the reality is that when you slam your watch into the water, if it's on your wrist when you jump in the pool, if you ever fall off a boat or you're water skiing and your watch takes a hit, that's going to create a momentary overpressure that far exceeds the 3, the 5 ATM, your 30 meter, your 50 meter rated depth. So you really need that margin, because the dynamic pressures that a watch is going to experience in practice are far greater than the static tests that they use to rate watches in the lab. And that's where the Overseas really sets itself apart. For example, the Patek Philippe 5980 is water resistant to 120 meters, and the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, not the offshore, but the Royal Oak Chronograph, is only water resistant down to 50 meters. So that's not a whole lot of margin for error if things get a little bit, shall we say, vigorous out in the pool or out on the boat. Now the Overseas is nice because it gives you that real sports watch durability with dress watch sense of occasion. This is a beautiful, beautiful bracelet. The tops of the lugs and the bracelet links are polished, so they flow together rather seamlessly. You can see that progression. Very elegant. You can see those little Maltese cross suggestions etched into the bracelet, and then the sides are polished, and that contrast is very dramatic in person. Everything about this just speaks to the quality and attention to detail that Vacheron still puts into its watches. They're arguably still the member of the so-called Holy Trinity that puts the most attention to detail into creating watches that are balanced between sport and elegance. I think Audemars Piguet has taken the sport route to the nth degree with the offshores, and Patek Philippe has decided that they are going to be the dress watch brand. Vacheron does a nice job of sort of straddling the fence with this overseas. And because it is what's inside that counts, oftentimes in the watch industry, it's worth noting that the movement inside this, which is the Vacheron caliber 1137, is based on the Frédéric Piguet flyback chronographs created for Blancpain and used almost exclusively by that brand, Vacheron, and Audemars Piguet for about 2 decades now. It's a very fine movement. The pusher quality is very high. You feel it. It's a tactile pleasure to use. It starts and stops very smoothly. And if you were to uncase the movement, Vacheron finishes it to their own standard, a very high standard. It's not Geneva Seal, but it's far better than you'll find in any Rolex Daytona. So if you want to experience a truly elegant, truly unique, and I must say quite rare sports chronograph, the Vacheron Constantin Overseas is an option that deserves a second look. This one's available from watchyouwant.com and is still under factory warranty. So if you'd like a nearly new watch for an aftermarket price, check out watchyouwant.com for this Vacheron Constantin Overseas chronograph.